Okay, thank you everyone for joining us for today's monthly Youth Peer Advocate TA call. I will admit Robbie Lettieri. Today's topic is empowering youth system advocates. So as the peer movement continues to evolve as youth peers amplify their voices across the nation, this training will provide an overview in systems advocacy and the significant roles that YPAs have in systemic change. Throughout the training, you will engage with tools and discussions pertaining to various levels of advocacy and engagement strategies, along with benefits of engaging with peer networks. Some systems, like the Youth Power network that we work with, represents mental health, behavioral health, child welfare, juvenile justice, special education, and many more. Remember that system change begins with us. So our objectives for today will define system advocacy and other youth peer movement terminology. We will gain tools to prepare action plans for system advocacy. We will understand the historical role and impact of peers in systemic change, and will identify locations and opportunities where youth peer advocates can engage with systems advocacy. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Kristen Rivera. You all are likely familiar with Kristen. She's our Youth Systems Engagement Specialist. Kristen is a driven, ambitious leader who strives to eliminate barriers in rehabilitation systems. Her passion stems from personal experience living with mental illness and facing difficulties in navigating services from systems during her childhood and now into adulthood. Kristen was the first of her family to pursue higher education, where she graduated with degrees in psychology and sociocultural anthropology. Before joining Youth Power, Kristen had the privilege of working with youth, young adults, and geriatric communities to assist in educating and empowering individuals on their road to recovery using peer recovery programs, direct care management, and community-based services. Kristen's favorite phrase is "be the change you wish to see in the world," which she embodies in her personal and professional life. Having grown up in Central New York region, Kristen aspires to strengthen her community on all levels, as well as create a safe space across rehabilitation systems for youth and young people in hopes of establishing trust and encouraging self-empowerment while developing a sense of community during their advocacy journey. And with that, I will pass it over to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon. As you know, my name is Kristen. Today's conversation is going to be fun, light, and engaging. I do apologize if I talk a little fast. I am nervous. And also kind of hearing your bio sometimes make you realize like, oh, wow, yeah, that's me. But thank you all so much for being here. I will share my screen to get started. So please just bear with me as I navigate this. Could somebody please give a thumbs up if you can see my shared screen and the presentation slides?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. So hello, welcome. This is Empowering Youth System Advocates. I'm glad we all made it here to our YPATA call. Just to get things started, I want you some introduction. So if everyone could please share your name and pronouns. And then I have an activity that I really love to do. So this is called a rosebud activity. Similar to a rose. Each part of the rose represents something in our lives. So as you think about what to share, I did include some prompts here. So in this rosebud activity, we have the thorn. So what is something to overcome? A bud, what is something you look forward to? And then the pretty bloomed flower. So what's something to appreciate? And I will start. So Kristen Rivera, she, they. My rose is, let's see, a thorn, something I had to overcome. Presenting. I get anxiety, y'all. So, but we're here, we're doing it. Then we have something I'm looking forward to, getting to know everybody here today, and sharing resources and tools. I am very passionate about systems advocacy, so I really just want to keep amplifying our voices and our experiences in those systems that have impacted us. And then lastly, what's something to appreciate? I'm just really grateful that I can be present. Sometimes being a peer is very hard to be present in the moment, getting caught up in the past or getting caught up in what could be. So I'm just really grateful that I'm able to be here and be present and enjoy everyone's company. I do want to open the mic for everyone on the floor. If you'd like, you could raise your hand or you could come off mute, type in the chat. However you feel comfortable with engaging today is all right.
I'll go. This is Joanna. My pronouns are she, they. I overcame a serious and long-term eating disorder from my teens and into early adulthood. I look forward to real spring biking weather, and I appreciate being a member of the peer advocate community.
I'll go next. This is
Thank you,
Carrie Ann.
Joanna.
This is Carrie Ann Royer. My thorn is I am working hard to overcome some medical challenges at the moment. My something to look forward to is I'm in the process of building a new home for my family and myself. And something I appreciate is my family, both in my personal life and in my work life.
Thank you, Carrie Ann.
I'm Leonora Mims, and I am my thorn. It was something that I overcame, struggling with mental health issues and recovery since I was 26 years old. I am happily in remission and in recovery for over 10 years. The bud, something to look forward to. I was just appointed the global team leader for STEM.org. And I just completed my advanced grant training with a mentor that I wanted to train with for the last 11 years. So I am just completing that. And something that I appreciate is that the hard work that I put into overcoming my mental health challenges and learning about them, becoming a New York State certified peer specialist, becoming a Sawabona healing practitioner, and working with the American Black Psychology Association online with helping people in Haiti with their mental health challenges. So I'm very happy to be here. And I wanted to share something that Kristen Rivera grew up in Utica, New York, where I grew up. So that's so nice to know, Kristen. And I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Leonora. Gotta represent. Would anyone else like to share?
I'll go. Hey, Kristen. Hey, everyone. My name is Rabi Latiri. My pronouns are he and him. Lenore, I just want to say that it sounds like you were doing really incredible things and have done incredible things. So congratulations, and I'm happy to share space with you today. I like this activity. I've never seen it. I've never seen this before. It's really cool. So my thorn, I've had to overcome some physical and mental health challenges in my life. My bud, I am looking forward to summer so much. I just can't wait for the beach and warm air and being able to sit outside and not freeze my toes off. And something that I appreciate, my flower, I am very grateful for my family and my friend, like my circle, my family and friends, and even some of my coworkers. They that add some spice and joy and pizzazz to my life.
Thank you so much, Robbie, for sharing.
Hello, I'm Melanie Hecker. I am the statewide youth advocacy specialist for OMH. And Robbie, I hope one of the spicy things is the jokes that I put in the Teams chat every morning. But okay, getting back to the serious stuff. My thorn would be I sometimes have a tendency to act or throw myself into things without thinking a lot. So that's something that I need to work on. A bud is my favorite holiday is coming up this weekend, Purim, so I'm excited for that. It's a Jewish holiday that is basically Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, and Mardi Gras rolled into one. And something to appreciate is the fact that things are getting so much better for people with co-occurring autism and mental health. Back when I was younger, it was sort of like a taboo topic that you didn't speak of because people weren't willing to work on crossover issues. But now people are much more willing, and OMH is doing a ton for people with co-occurring developmental disability and mental health, so I'm happy and thankful for that.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Would anyone else like to share? I just want to reiterate that the chat is also live. So if you feel more comfortable sharing in our text chat, please feel free to do so.
I can share next. My name is Blaze Mercedes. I'm a YPA from Western New York. My pronouns are they, them. A thorn. Probably just the general survival while everything is happening. Something I'm looking forward to is some warmer weather. That would be great. I'm not a fan of snow, and it's very icky. And hopefully the Asian beetles will exit my apartment when it warms up and stop eating my plants. And then something I appreciate. I believe Melanie just spoke on this about just general knowledge, advocacy, and the ability to like speak more on those with autism. As like a late diagnosed human, it's also really, really incredible finding a community of people who just get it. And it's less taboo and more just, yeah, this is how I function, and here are the things I can contribute, because my brain is so unique.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Sounds like we're all looking forward to spring and good weather. I do have to agree, I'm not a fan of colds and dark and gloomy. So I'm glad we're all on the same page here. And please keep this energy as we continue with the slideshow. I just want to also reiterate, I did dedicate some time for breaks and group discussions. So there will be more times for chatting and resting throughout this presentation. And with that, let's dive right in. So today we're going to be talking about systems advocacy, trying to define what it means, define other youth peer movement terminology, and then go into how can we really engage with systems advocacy on different levels. As long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persists in our world, none of us can truly rest, by the great Nelson Mandela. So let's break this down. What is systems advocacy? So I want to split it into two of its root words before going into what this momentum is. So systems are understood to be a set of connected things or parts forming a complex whole created to carry out a specific activity, perform a duty, or solve a problem. On the flip side, we have advocacy. So advocacy is an act or process of pleading or arguing favor of something, such as a cause, idea, or policy. So in overall, we define systems advocacy as efforts in vocalizing change in government, organizations, or agencies through policies, rules, and laws. So ideally, systems advocacy could mean a lot of things, depending on what system you want to engage with. So this definition is a broad definition, and I'm hoping to get some feedback on this as well later on in this meeting, as we are currently working on creating a advocacy toolkit, and we would like some feedback from our network and from our youth peer advocates in the field to really make sure that we're catering to what's going on and the language that everyone is using in this movement. So how does the government influence systems? When we're talking about systems advocacy, that's usually the highest level of advocacy, being that systems are things that the government regulates. And they do this by raising money through taxes, deciding how to spend it with their budget. So that could be a national budget, statewide budget, and even all the way down to county and city level budgets. They also write laws, set rules, and create standards and direct the government-funded agencies. So many of us here work within government-funded agencies, whether that is with the state, whether that is with a community provider, or whether that is with a national organization. Then we have directly and indirectly provides goods and services to its citizens. Some of these goods and services include possibly having an institution, right? So we have residential treatment facilities in the mental health field. We have other residential facilities in the behavioral health and child welfare, recovery systems, right? So that's kind of an idea of what services that the government could provide and influence the citizens that is providing services to. And then lastly, it is expected that our government is responsive to its citizens and carry out the will of its people. And this is not just an opinion, this is based on past advocates, right? So we have our Constitution, Bill of Rights, International Declaration of Human Rights, and those are just a few examples of policies and laws that were implemented to make sure that we have a voice in our government systems. And although they could influence us as citizens and community members, we also influence them. And I think that's very important as a peer advocate. Sometimes we deal with adversity and we get a little scared to engage with the system that caused those adversities. So I wanted to share this to remind everyone that we do have the right to share our voice and we have the right to influence them right back. Just to go into a little bit more, what do these branches of government look like that kind of help regulate the systems that we're advocating within? So in our country, we have 3 branches of government, all of which were included in our Constitution, which provides a separation of powers. So we have our 3 branches. We have the legislative branch, which makes laws. This happens on a national level. So we have Congress, which is consisting of elected officials from every state within this country, and they are elected through voting processes. And those representatives could be a senator representing the state and their districts, as well as a House of Representatives representing the districts of its people. Next, we have our executive branch. So this is the branch that helps to carry out the laws. This includes the president, vice president, and the cabinet of staff. And again, this person does get voted in by citizens, then goes through an oversight committee, and then we receive a new president every 4 years. And then lastly, we have our judicial branch. So this branch helps to evaluate the laws. So based on our Constitution, we want to make sure that we are inclusive of the rights, that all laws made within legislation apply and are constitutional. So this Supreme Court consists of 9 justices that are nominated by the president and then approved by the Senate via voting. And then there's other federal courts aside from the Supreme Court. So typically the process in which the judicials would evaluate the laws would be having them go through smaller court systems, so maybe city-based, county-based, or state level, and then through annulment processes and trying to, show that people want their rights. Maybe they feel like the smaller court systems did not have a rights process. They did not follow the law in which they're supposed to. So that's kind of how those judicial courts at the supreme level get involved with the community legal advocacy. And that could take a long time as well. So just to reiterate too, these branches of government, they're continuously working. However, sometimes as community members, we may not see the effects of these national branches because they do take a long time to make the laws, carry them out, and then of course evaluate them. So now we have a little understanding. Okay, so those are national branches of government that have to do with the legal side of it. So what do we do, right? What do we do as citizens? What do we do as people living in this country that want to share our voice and our experiences? We are those system advocates. So again, to break this down, an advocate is someone who speaks out or writes in support of someone or something. They act on behalf of someone else or of themselves, right, depending on the situation, or they represent the interests of another. So typically in systems, we're representing a larger group of people. In the sense of peer advocacy, we're also including our own personal experiences. So a peer advocate is someone who combines their wisdom and lived experience to make that systemic change. And as a peer advocate, we act on behalf of and represent a statewide and also a national peer movement. And then we also represent the peer movement in alignment with our code of ethics. As a youth peer advocate, once you go through your credential process, you do submit an application and agree to this code of ethics, which is saying that in your current role and outside your role, you still will abide by these social behaviors, right? This construct of this is how we want to advocate, this is how we should be treated, and this is how we should treat others. Any questions so far about systems advocates or systems advocacy? Okay, we'll keep on chugging along here. That leads us to our first discussion. Yay! So please feel free to type in the chat or come off mute. But I just want to hear your thoughts. What are some local, statewide, and national systems that directly impact youth and young adults?
I work with a school system, and I was an advocate for youth that had IEP programs and FRPE programs. So I advocated for them to have access and to not be over disciplined with the disciplinary process that the school had. And I really enjoyed what I did. And these students were sometimes students that had emotional disorders or they had problems at home. So it was a unique program, and I did a great job, and I really liked the work that I did, and it helped the students learn that they were valued and that they were important, and that they could look beyond their situation and start businesses. One of my students started an online business that's very successful. So that's one of the things that I did, and that I will always be proud of advocating for the right of this young lady to have a free and appropriate public education.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Lenora. So Lenora basically is saying that she has experience with advocating in the education system on all levels, right? So local, statewide, and national systems of education. And we need some more people, some more peers in that system. So I appreciate that you're already in there and doing the work. Anyone else want to share what are some local, statewide, national systems that directly impact? Oh,
I'd
sorry.
like
Go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, I'd like to say the Medicaid system. Because the thing is, one, most services for youth and young adults go through Medicaid, but Medicaid is also extremely confusing for youth and young adults to understand and can be almost impossible to navigate without the help of an adult. But not every youth and young adult has somebody who can guide them through all of the intricacies of Medicaid.
Yeah, I agree, Melanie. I think Medicaid, although it's very beneficial, it does come with a lack of knowledge, right? Like if we're not in the field actively aware of what's going on with the changes, and sometimes as a young person getting that service and opportunity, it gets very confusing. And how do we know what to advocate for, right? How do we know where our voice is, where it could be implemented if we're not aware of the process that those policies are made? And I do agree too, it does impact young people at all levels, right? As a child, maybe your parent is the one that is taking care of that, but as you enter adulthood, now it starts to become you that has to be familiar with these processes and how to advocate for yourself in that system that is constantly changing. I keep up with the Medicaid stuff, like I'm on some listservs, and I always see that there's constant change with what could be billed, what can't be billed, what coverage and things like that. So I think that's a really great system to mention. So thank you, Melanie. And then I'm going to read Blaze. They typed in the chat here. So Blaze said red tape around access to healthcare and mental health services, for sure. I work with LGBTQ plus youth, so many of these issues are compounded by lack of natural supports. I agree. Yeah, healthcare is a really big one, especially nationally right now, with a lot of the judicial branch changing some of our legislation. So I do think that not only affects all the youth in this country, but definitely young people that may have adverse experiences such as the LGBTQ plus community. Thank you, Blaze. And then Joanna wrote, the criminal justice system. Yes, we need more diversion programs, access to quality legal representation, court advocates. Yes, peers. Yep. And re-entry supports. Yeah, I agree. It's at least with the court system and the criminal justice system, sometimes they do appreciate peers when they're in those systems, right? Maybe they're incarcerated and helping each other, but there could be a lack of supporting people once they transition out of that system, right? So that's kind of where a lot of peers are starting to advocate with, helping people with that transition and getting supports that they need while they're trying to navigate their own personal needs. So thank you, Joanna. And then Leonora also wrote, you can see my work on News Roots on Instagram. Yes, Queen. My students were connected to Cornell University professors as part of their IEP. My program was the very first CDOS and Regents Diploma. CDOS is Career Diploma Occupational Studies. That's really awesome. And Leonora, I would love to learn more about that. Hopefully we can connect after this chat here. Thank you everyone so much for sharing. So ideally this discussion is just to showcase that there is not one system that does not impact young people on all these levels, right? We're talking about education, we're talking about justice, we're talking about health, mental health, wellness, right? Insurance. All of these systems are on all of these levels. They impact nationally, statewide, and local youth and young adults. So thank you again, everyone, for engaging with our discussion question. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff, some language. Personally, this was kind of challenging, just because there are so many different types of advocacy languages used depending on the system and depending on really what type of peer support are we working with, right? As youth peers, we are, I don't want to say new because we've been around, y'all. We've been here. But in the sense of systems advocacy, this is newer for us, right? And by new, I mean like within the decade and 20 years. So when it comes to how do we find language that we could all use that supports the movement and supports our mission without getting confused. I like to say without getting lost in the sauce. I don't know if y'all heard that before, but definitely language can be a barrier in advocating on the systems level. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of these terms, and you will get the slideshow. So if I do go through it quickly and maybe you didn't get to write it down or take a screenshot, that's fine. You will have access to these terms after this presentation. Oh, and I forgot to do the transition there. I had one more discussion question here. So why is youth peer movement language important? I kind of gave the answer accidentally, but we could still have a discussion here. So would anyone like to share why they think language is important to the cause of this movement? Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on here.
The clicker can be so testy and sensitive.
Oh yeah. I'm learning, y'all. Learning curve. But so yeah, I kind of gave the answer already. So some ways that language is important to our youth peer movement. Unity. We have peers in all different systems, right? Our youth peer movement in New York State started with behavioral health, going into mental health, and now we have expanded into all of these systems that we are talking about: education, justice, child welfare, insurance, being hired as state employees, right? In the field offices, in the statewide offices. So there needs to be some unity in the language that we're using, because we're not all in the same system advocating at the same time, right? So, and with that unity comes an understanding. How can we be understood by folks who don't know what we are doing if we don't have appropriate language and appropriate words that really represent what we mean? Respect, inclusion, allyship, cross systems advocacy, again, going into the fact that youth peer advocates are not just in behavioral health anymore. We're really expanding into all youth serving systems. National advocacy. There are other national peer movements. Each state has its own youth peer movement. So although New York State, we're really strong and we have a great community, there's other states that are up and coming that we could collaborate with. And, you know, how can we do that? Connect our state with other peer advocates from other states that are still pushing the same mission, right? Inclusion of youth voice. And then we have our adult allies and organization of a movement. So how can we progress? How can we make progress? How can we make change as a large unit of advocates? Okay. There we go. So here are some terms that I'm just going to briefly define. So I'll read them off and then I'll go into the definition. So we have policy, rule, law, youth, transition age youth, young adult, emerging adult, youth advocate, advocate for youth, a little different there, youth guided, youth directed, youth driven, and authentic youth engagement. We're all here for the youth and young people, y'all. So there's a lot of new terms, and a lot of these terms I did get from a national organization. It's called Youth Move National. They do represent the youth peer movement on a national and probably international level at this point. And so they created some terms that nationally young people are using or possibly favoring within the movement. So now we're going to get into these definitions here. So some words to know. Policy, what the government chooses to do or not to do about a particular issue. We typically, as peer advocates, really work in the public policy realm. So public policy is an institutionalized proposal used to solve or address the public needs by implementing elements such as guidelines, regulations, and action plans. Then we go into rules. So rules is a mechanism that limits or regulates a social behavior. There are a lot of synonyms for rules. A lot of the ones that we may be familiar with are regulations, right? How do we regulate an institution or an organization? Ordinances, requirements, and restrictions. And these typically apply to basic needs, right? So food, water, shelter, and other essentials of humans. Then we go into law. So law is a system of rules which a body of governments or community recognizes as regulatory actions of its members. So this could be enforced by imposing penalties or punishments on a person or people. And we do understand that there are people who do regulate the law. You know, we have police officers, lawyers, judicial officials, and so on. And, you know, all of these folks play a role in how the policy is created, how we're going to create the rules, right? How do we have that social behavior and constructs? And then how do we make it official, right? So when it becomes a law, it's typically formal, it goes through a voting process, and then it becomes implemented. Youth. So youth, this is where it gets a little tricky. Youth is not defined by age range. In New York State, however, with youth power, we do define it as age range because of our infrastructure, right? So generally, youth is to encompass children with an implied understanding that one will grow into adulthood. So youth could apply to a 3-year-old, youth could apply to a 12-year-old, youth could apply to an 18-year-old, and youth could apply to a 25-year-old, right? It's not about the number. It's about the idea that this young human is going to grow through some stages in life and is going to deal with some things, right? So that's basically what we're using the youth term for. And just like I said, for example, like youth power, we define youth as 12 to 29-year-olds. However, some people may define it as 13 to 25, right? Depending on the organization, depending on the state, and depending on the system that this young person is engaging with. Then we have transition age youth. So this applies to individuals who are in the process of entering adulthood, typically, 16 to 25 years. That's how we define it in this state. But again, it changes across the country. And this typically has an acronym associated with it, TAY, T-A-Y, and it rhymes with yay, because yay, they're making it to adulthood, which is really something powerful and beautiful, especially when we understand that young people are not making it to adulthood. So that is transition aged youth. And it also applies to youth transitioning from childcare services to adult services. So again, depending on the system, right? Some folks that are impacted by the disability system, their services may go up until 25, right? So they're still technically a youth, not in adult services, even though they're legally an adult by the time they're 18. Then we have young adults, so commonly used to bridge communication gaps and labeling gaps between adults and youth. If you don't know what to say, if they're a youth, you don't want to call them adult, all right, you're a young adult. Youth power recognizes young adults from 18 to 29 years old. And again, depending on the organization and the state, that could expand, right? I've been in situations where actually just yesterday, I attended a local networking event where they wanted all young people 50 and younger. That's how they define young people, right? So it depends on the organization, depends on the culture and the community. And but just to reiterate, youth power does recognize young adults as 18 to 29 years old. Emerging adults. Now, this term isn't really favored by the youth movement nationally, but a lot of our adult allies may use this term. So I wanted to include it in here. This is an alternative word for the TAY, right? Transition age youth, emerging adult. They could be used interchangeably. And then this is to address that transition period, right? So how are they going to enter adulthood? And it's really, they're just gaining greater responsibilities, although they may not be an adult yet, right? So 18 years old, that's adult. So maybe they're 16, they have a job, right? They're trying to get their livelihood started, and they may be called an emerging adult, or they also may be called a transition age youth. Then we have youth advocate, a young person who uses their lived experience to educate, inform, and empower others. So youth advocates could age between 15 and 25 nationally. However, again, as we understand, youth does not apply to an age range. It could be anyone, right? Anyone that can advocate on behalf of themselves or someone else. That's considered a youth advocate. Then we have an advocate for youth. So although this state, like I said, youth power, our network system, we do recognize that youth peer advocates could be up until 30. So we don't typically use advocate for youth in our network. However, being that we're in different systems, right, this may be a term that people may use. So advocate for youth is a young adult who transitions from being a youth advocate to advocating for youth involvement across individual program and systems levels. So nationally in Youth Move, they recognize this as 25 to 35 years. But again, it's different, right? It's different for every state and every network. Next, we have youth guided. So used to describe youth and young adults taking lead in decision-making processes while providing direction to their peers. Could be used interchangeably with youth directed. Here in Youth Power, we like to use youth guided. That typically means that young people are involved at all the decision-making processes, right? They're included in the brainstorming, they're included in the decision-making, and then they're included in the implementation of those decisions. Youth-directed, this term is used to describe youth and young adults who develop rules, groups, and structures to help make those executive decisions, such as travel, projects, marketing, and so on. So this is probably the later stage of youth guided practice. Right now, we're in a leadership role. We are giving the demands, right? We are making those decisions on behalf of ourselves or of a group. And we're really full hands on deck. This could also be used to use when collaborating, right? So the youth is directing this organization, but there could be adult allies present, right? Or there could be younger youth present as well. Then we have youth driven. So this is used when youth and young adults are seen as the primary leaders in a situational organization. So for example, Youth Power, we are youth driven, right? All of our staff are young people with system experiences, and our network consists of young people that are leaders in their communities that we're trying to amplify into systems advocacy. So this can be done by developing agendas, public speaking, and strategically sharing, people's lived experience, as well as education and trainings. Then we have authentic youth involvement. This is being transparent and intentional to involve and engage and partner with both youth and young adults, as well as the adult supporters or allies. And this partnership is essential. This partnership is essential for youth who are transitioning into adulthood and are in need of support from advocates. Excuse me. In our network, we like the word engagement instead of involvement, right? Involvement may be surface level, right? Just having someone present means they're involved. Versus engaging means, okay, they have full attention in it. They actually want to be here. They want to do something. And ideally, maybe want to become an advocate, right? Once they're more comfortable and empowered to do so. But wait, there's more. There are so many terms, y'all. I did not want to bore everybody here with dictionary language, but I just want to let y'all know that there are other language resources that you will receive once this training is done. And some of those language resources include Disability Language Guide, American Psychological Association, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, language guide, language in the youth movement, which was a lot of those terms came from that resource. Then we have the acronyms from OPWDD, or Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. We have mental health acronyms from the Office of Mental Health in New York State. Then we have family court and key roles and players. So that kind of defines some terms for young people involved in the justice system and for families involved in the justice system. And then lastly, a list of acronyms from the Department of Health. So Department of Health kind of oversees the Medicaid billing and a lot of those policies that go into these services. And they, of course, have their own list of acronyms. The history. Where would we be without our giants from the past? I do have a quick video that I wanted to share. I think I might be short on time. I'm not too sure. Could somebody share what time it is with me?
Oh, sure. It's 1:20. We can go until 2 o'clock, and we can also alternatively share this YouTube link after the call with participants. So it's entirely up to you, Kristen.
Okay. Well, this video is a little lengthy, so but I could still share. I'm a little knowledgeable about our history. So, in case you're not familiar, the peer movement did not just happen overnight. Okay, especially the youth peer movement. A lot of the peer advocates, they like to use this term, we stand on the shoulder of giants. Our peer advocacy stemmed from the civil rights and disability rights movement that happened within this country because folks with labels that were being forced into institutions were not getting their rights. They did not have rights in these institutions. They're not being heard. They're not being respected. And so with that came this beautiful movement of disability rights movement. And because of these advocates who put their life on the line, and I mean that seriously, okay, we've lost a lot of advocates doing this work. And sometimes as youth peer advocates, we're not familiar with the history. Okay, historically, women could not vote. Historically, people of color, indigenous, BIPOC communities, we did not have rights. Okay, and I just want to remind everyone that because as we enter this new stage of this movement, I urge us not to forget where it started. And these are some photos that I found online from the disability rights movement and civil rights movement. These are a lot of people advocating nationally at the federal buildings, Capitol buildings, and so on. And because of them and because of civil rights movements, folks, and women's rights movements, we are now here. And me, as a person of color, as a woman, as a peer, I'm very grateful that I have the privilege I do today and that my peers have the privileges that we do today. It's very scary, y'all. It's very scary. We have to keep advocating. So just to go into a little bit of the history, so this movement began in the 60s, right? So during a time where human rights of disabled institutionalized citizens were violated. And I don't mean violated like, oh, I feel violent. Like, no, people were dying. Okay, that's the reality of what was going on with this movement. And it's really dehumanization, right? They were not treated like humans. They were not treated like people. And because of that, this movement arose from peers. It arose from the families of people in those institutions, community members, and later on those advocates, right? The peers, the people that got out of those institutions who then wanted to go back because their friends and their family were still being dehumanized. And so because of their legislative pressures from all of these combined movements, there was a lot of unity, right? So although we're advocating for different policies, there was still a sense of community amongst all of these different movements that were happening at the same time. And thanks to all of our giants in the past, we now have legislation that led to peer advocacy. Now we're recognized institutionally and systematically. And, you know, there's still federal laws and guidance today that recognize these movements and our rights. So again, we have to thank our peers of our past, peers of our present, and leave this path for those in the future. Going to our youth peer movement, right? So this is how we started, y'all. It came from people in those institutions, right? Now, young people were like, hold up, we have a voice too. We're getting impacted from these systems. We're being dehumanized because of our age. Kind of doesn't make sense. And so our youth peer movement gained momentum in our state from system impacted young people, from young people as children who are getting services and being institutionalized within the state. And they wanted that change. They saw their peers not make it out of these systems, not make it out of these institutions, no matter how much support, optional or forced, they were getting. So now we have youth peer support. This is understood as an evidence-based practice, meaning there's a lot of research showing that this stuff is working. We're saving lives, we're building communities, and we're strengthening our missions and our advocacy. And it's now also a billable service. So we're getting paid, y'all. We're getting paid to do this. Back then, that was just with the kindness of their heart. Right now, we're getting paid to be advocates and getting paid to support young people to make sure that our voice is still heard in these systems. And not only do we get paid and have a beautiful workforce within the state, our movement has momentum. We are growing locally and nationally, even internationally. Peers are everywhere. As Joanna is saying in the chat, peer work is real work. And we do have to thank these empowered youth and young adults and our adult allies, right? Those allies that started this movement, and we picked up that momentum and we're keeping it going. And just to reiterate that this is a momentum, things are happening today. This is not like, oh, in 2010, something great happened and we could just talk about it. There are still historical things happening this year, 2024. And these are some examples of some of these things that our youth peer movement is recognizing as historical. So we have, again, our youth peer support recognized as Medicaid billable service. We have our youth peer advocate credential, financially sponsored by New York State Office of Mental Health, meaning these young people can get a job, can get their finances covered to become educated through this credential process, and then enter a workforce to support people that have similar experiences. Youth Power became nationally recognized as a Greater New York chapter of Youth Move National. So we're not only community and statewide advocacy, we represent all the young people in the state to the entire country. We have the How-Tos of Youth Guided Practice Toolkit. We're teaching people, hey, this is how to be a great supporter. This is how to be a great ally to the youth that you're engaging with, that you're providing services with. And the families, right? It's not just young people. There's a whole dynamic of families, natural supports, and a community that we have to ensure they have the tools, right, to support these young people in these systems. Now we have the rise of youth and young adult advisory councils within government agencies. We have been recognized by the governor for the first time in history within the state. Governor Kathy Hochul and her youth roundtable listening series that took place in 2023. I was fortunate enough to be a part of that as a facilitator and a moderator. It was very, very humbling, y'all. Very humbling. These young people are vocal. Vocal. And they're ready. They want change. They want change. And then lastly, within this year, we now have our youth advisory boards. Typically, I think the name is now the Youth Mental Health Advisory Board, in collaboration with the Governor Hochul's Executive Committee, New York State Office of Mental Health, and New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports, as well as with Youth Power. And honestly, who knows what other history we're making today, y'all? Every day, I always tell people, we're making history. We don't recognize it, but wait until that next generation of youth peer advocates come. They're going to be grateful and appreciative that we kept this momentum going. We're giving them a platform. We're showing them, yes, you can do this. Your voice matters. Adults want to hear what you have to say. Do not fear. Right? So that's just an overview of like this movement is still happening. We're making history presently. And then some additional educational resources. So these are some historical videos I found on YouTube that talk about the different movements that are ongoing that kind of brought up our peer movement. So again, please feel free to watch those after today. And I have a break. So I think it might be appropriate to take a little breather. It is about let me check. Yeah, we're at
It's
1:30
1:29.
now.
Yeah.
Okay,
You want to
1:29.
return at 1:35?
Yep, that sounds good.
Oh, that's
Please grab
lovely.
some
Thanks.
water, stretch. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I'll just give it a minute so folks can get comfortable again. Welcome back, everyone. I hope we all had a restful little break. I will be continuing our training here. And the second half is really going to focus on those tools and opportunities for folks to engage with systems advocacy. I have another powerful quote here. When the world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful. And this photo was from the COVID pandemic lockdown. As you see, Times Square is a little empty. And yet, even during the social lockdown, advocates were still amplifying their voices across the state and the nation. So, the fun part, what are these tools? What can I use today, tomorrow, and forever to help me and help my community prepare for advocacy within systems advocacy? I want to start off with giving some examples for self-advocacy and community advocacy. I did not define these terms as this presentation focused on systems. However, I will define them now. So self-advocacy is advocating on behalf of your personal needs. That could look like boundaries. That could look like a routine, self-care. And some other ways that we could practice self-advocacy are by telling our story. What is our narrative? What's our story that we want people to know about us? Some other things could be practicing faith, finding meaningful life, using affirmations, meditations, exercising, reading, right? All of these things to nurture our body and our spirit for ourselves. It's okay to be selfish. All right, we have to have a full cup before we can start pouring into others. Then we go into community advocacy. So this is on a more local level. I understand community advocacy to be on like an organizational level or city-based, right, county-based, and really just trying to connect people that live closely geographically together to support a mission or movement. And some ways that you can engage with community advocacy include volunteering, signing up for newsletters and mailing lists, hosting and attending a youth speak out, tabling, protesting, rallies, march, listening sessions, right? We don't always have to speak. Sometimes we could just listen, take in what these young people in our community want. Having circle conversations, that's becoming very popular. Sitting in a circle represents connectedness. And even just having that adaptive space, creating a circle can create a very powerful conversation between the people within it. Having committees, right? You could be on a committee for your city or your town or village. You could be on a committee for an organization. And of course, attending and supporting events that are going on in your community. That could look like in-person events or virtual events, all of which will help build that sense of belonging and help you expand your supports. I did divide systems advocacy into 2 sections, one of which being organizational, which is what I'm going to talk about now. So these are things that you could do on an organizational level, meaning your place of work, right? If you're a youth peer advocate and you're working within an agency or an organization, these are things that you could do today, right? These are things, steps you could take, or things you can get involved with. If not in your own place of work, then another agency that is looking for youth experts. So some of these opportunities include having youth advisory councils, boards, having a youth action board or action committee. So advisory means you're overseeing, right, what's going on, but somebody else is doing the work, versus an action board or action committee, those young people are doing it themselves, right? So they are involved in all the processes and they're executing those initiatives themselves. Work groups, if there are folks within your agency or your organization that may not understand how to engage with young people, you're an expert. You know how to engage your young people. You were that young person that didn't like how that provider interacted with you, or you wanted to do something more, right? Have leadership. And you can establish those working groups to not only just build a relationship with your colleagues and your peers, but also to problem solve, right? It's really healthy to share different perspectives and, how can you best engage and support the young people that you're serving. Engagement committees, board of directors, and even so becoming a credentialed youth peer advocate, right? Just going through that process alone, you gain a whole network of support and opportunities. So again, these are things you could do on an organizational level. Then next, I'm going to go into government, right? So this is still systems, just on a broader base. So what can we do to advocate within systems with the government? Get employed. We're very fortunate now. We're in a time where a lot of our systems within New York State, the New York State agencies, they want peers, whether that's to hire them as a permanent employee, whether that's to contract with them, whether that is to join an advisory board or committee. They want us, right? And we need to be ready to share our experience with them. Internships. Knowing the lay of the land before you make that commitment, right? Maybe you don't know if you want to go to government advocacy or be involved in a government system as a peer, right? A lot of times young people, we're still healing from those experiences. That wasn't too long ago for us. So internship is a way to kind of test the water, as I like to say, right? Do I like this system? Maybe not. Maybe I'll try this system over here, right? So those are opportunities that you could do. And then some other ones include, being on advisory boards, attending the state agency town halls and engagement series or listening sessions. So for example, I know that there right now is like a master of aging or the master plan of aging, right, to support folks entering retirementhood and our older populations, and how can we connect our younger populations and generations to support our older generations, and so on. There's also engagement series. I know the Office of Mental Health hosts them on a regional and sub-regional basis, as well as the Department of Health, right? So there are a lot of these state operated agencies that host events where they want us to be there. They want youth voice. They want family voice, and especially peer voice. Create a policy agenda or priorities. If you're not a talker, maybe you're a shower, right? If you don't feel comfortable speaking, here's a beautiful packet of all the things I want to say in one spot for you to look at when you're ready, right? So that's another alternative way that we can advocate within systems on a governmental level. And then meeting with your district representatives. We have a New York State Senate and we have a New York State Assembly. all of which represent all the diverse rural, urban, and minority communities across this state. They are advocates for you. Utilize them, meet with them, know their names, their faces, and make sure they know yours, right? There's not a better feeling than walking into a space and somebody recognizes you from a past encounter, right? That means you left your mark, you left an impression on those people, and they want to hear from you again. Okay. I'm going to skip this discussion question, but if y'all want to type it in the chat, please feel free. So in your experience, what are some creative solutions to overcoming advocacy barriers? Personally, one of my solutions was getting employed. I was a college student. I knew I wanted to do mental health advocacy, but I knew I wasn't financially ready to go into a master's or graduate program. And that's typically the path, right, that they want people to go when you're trying to get into mental health services. So I went a different route. I entered the peer workforce. You don't need a college education. However, I'm grateful that I have that experience because that gives me some leadership expertise and independence that I would not have had if I didn't go to college. So that's one way that I overcame the barrier. And then even so now, as a peer advocate, working with a statewide system, I'm not limiting myself, right? I'm not someone who feels comfortable when I'm not working on something, probably just a trauma response, or you know what I'm saying, like overachiever. And so for me, I'm always looking for something to do. I'm always looking for something to get involved with, something to engage with. And because of that, I'm fortunate enough now to be a board member for a national organization. I'm fortunate enough to be an advisory board member for a national research organization through a university in Massachusetts. And who knows what's next, right? Like those are just things that I'm grateful that I'm able to do. And I want to encourage other people to keep looking for stuff, right? There's opportunities out here, but there are barriers to getting there. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So again, if you want to type in the chat or some creative solutions that you have done, or maybe someone you know has done to overcome barriers, please feel free to type those in the chat. Okay, this is the part that I really want to get to. So our systems advocacy action plan. What better way to advocate than be prepared, right? We love preparation. So what's an action plan? Action plans are specific lists or tasks in order to achieve a particular goal. They could be written by an individual or group of advocates, but ideally these plans are to guide what's next, right? To guide the advocates that are engaging in the advocacy. And why do we need them? Well, there's plenty of benefits, right, for preparing. And I could include the research, but we know from our own experience that when we prepare, things happen, right? So one way that it's important, they outline the steps to take, and it helps you stay organized. Being in a statewide role currently, and trying to connect with youth that have all come from different different demographics, we have to stay organized here, right? Even on a smaller scale, if you're in a community and you're engaging with young people, know what's up. Know what's up with them. Stay organized. Remember, okay, this young person, they play soccer. This young person, they're into music. This young person, they like video games, right? Just staying organized, up to date. And even something like that could be considered an action plan. How can I advocate for the youth if I don't know what's up with them? If I'm not connected with them? So this could be used for personal and professional goals. It could be used as a reflection tool, and it could help guide the future advocacy efforts. Now, I would like to take credit for this, but unfortunately, I didn't make this. I did find it on Google. So there are plenty of options out here. This is one, like I said, that I found virtually. So free templates out there. And part of this action plan is to, one, identify the issues, right? What are we trying to address here? What's the goal? And that's one of the activities that we're really going to get into, how to do a SMART goal. This will help guide the action plan, right? There may be one goal, there may be 10 goals. We have to make sure that they're measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive. A completion date, action steps, and then with each step, assigning who will do it, when they will do it by, listing the resources. What do I have right now? What's available to me? Versus what resources do I need? Right? What am I lacking? Communication. Who needs to know about this? Right? If my action step is to understand young people that I'm engaging with, right? Build a connection with them. Who else needs to know this information that I'm getting? Maybe my supervisor, maybe my other peer advocates, right? That are doing mental health advocacy. Maybe they want to know what young people are up to, right? Maybe the government. If you're on a committee or action board or any of those things, they want that insight. And then what are those barriers? What are barriers that you face as an advocate engaging with this action plan? And what are barriers that the community is facing, right? If you're doing this on behalf of something greater than yourself, it's very important to understand what barriers other people are going through. Earlier, we talked about Medicaid. That's a huge barrier. How do people get affordable services if they're unfamiliar with the process in which it gets paid? Because personally, I've had moments where I thought something was covered, and then I get a pretty little letter in the mail, and the next thing you know, you're having like a little panic attack because you're like, oh, I do not have that that amount on me right now to pay that off. So those are just some things that are real life problems, right? Real life barriers to not only self-advocacy, but even systems advocacy. How did I know that I had something due, that this wasn't going to be covered because the policy changed? How do I know that my voice is going to be heard? So I just want to wrap up with a SMART goal. And thank you all for being patient with me. I know there's a lot of content here, but very informational. So a SMART goal is an acronym for a way to how to set up a goal and how to achieve it, right? So S is for specific, make the goal clear and specific. Measurable, how can you measure this process? Attainable, is this realistic? Can you actually do this? If not, how can we change it to make it more attainable? Relevant, is this relevant to your cause, to your mission? And time-based, can I make this happen this year, this month, tomorrow? Right? Those are things to consider. So I put some examples here, and oh, there we go. Lost them. Lost all my slides. Okay. Sorry, y'all. Okay. So I have some examples here on how to set a SMART goal. This one, how to be a board member, right? I put some specifics here. This one, I want to increase youth engagement. So this example, so my specific goal, a county-based organization to increase engagement with rural youth by hosting a youth forum. Very specific. No one's going to question that statement. Well, how are you going to do this? Who do you want to talk to? What's your goal? Right, boom, right there, one-liner. Measurable. How can I measure the progress? I can maintain the listserv of people already engaging. Boom. Now I know who's engaging already. That's measurable. I could track the registration for my events. Okay, now I know who's interested and possibly where they're coming from, right? What's their demographics? What's their identities? Creating surveys to collect feedback after the event. Develop premeditated questions to engage with the youth if maybe they don't have questions or statements already available. And then repeat this again, right? Repeat all this youth forum next quarter or next month, right? And compare. Did we have more people attend? Did we have less people attend? Did they talk about the same thing? Right? Those are things that we can measure to keep track of our progress. Attainable. Can I actually afford to do this? Do I have the supports and resources? I have allocated funding to host youth forums at the local public library. The funding will go to sponsor food and travel for the youth. I have supportive adult and youth colleagues who will assist with outreach and group facilitation. Attainable. I have resources. Relevant. As an advocate, I want to gain insight on the adverse or joyful experiences, right? Not all the youth recognize that something was adverse or traumatic. For example, with the Governor Roundtable series, we talked about social media and mental health and the impacts of the pandemic. There were young people that did not feel impacted. Life was regular. There were other young people, their worlds fell apart. Same experience, coming from the same area, two completely different perspectives and reactions, right? So keep that in mind as well. It's not always negative when we're engaging with young people. And of course, as a young adult, I can relate. I understand how to engage with young people. And as a peer, I can use my lived experience to inspire those young people, right? Show them, hey, I understand. Look where I'm at. This could be you. This could be us. And then time-based, right? This is the most important, in my opinion. Set a schedule. School is in session till June. Youth will be more available during summer break. Start planning in March. Outreach April. Registration deadline May. Travel and food needs to be done by early June so that when they do come in late June, when school's out, everything's all set. Don't have to worry about it. That's the time-based part to it. And then I want all of us to do our own SMART goal, but I know I'm kind of running out of time. Does anybody want to practice doing a SMART goal? We don't have to, but okay. And then I include some self-reflection. So again, when you're creating these goals, ask yourself these questions. What are you comfortable with this? Do you need support? Right? Are you already doing these things? How can you support other people? And then some opportunities, just go quickly. I am creating an Excel sheet. It's just a little snip of opportunities I've located through my research. And these are all either New York State or national opportunities for youth and young adults. And that will get shared once completed. And then we have some opportunities within Youth Power as well. So again, y'all are all welcome to engage with our network. And I encourage y'all to continue engaging outside of our network in our trainings. And lastly, my favorite quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. I live by that. I'm embodying it. We're excited and thank you.
Wow. That was magnificent. Thank you so much, Kristen, for leading us through a very knowledge-rich and impassioned conversation for empowering youth system advocates. Everyone on this call is a youth system advocate, and Kristen has left us with a lot of information to follow up with, including tools like action plan templates and how to develop SMART goals. I will personally revisit those slides in depth. We very much welcome you to April's TA call if you haven't yet registered. That call will be led by our training coordinator, Megan Simpson, on April the 18th at 12:30 to 2 o'clock. A reminder that we meet on the third Thursday of each month. We also will send an email to everyone here in the next day or two with a recording of this webinar, a copy of Kristen's slides, and some additional resources to extend your learning. So I just dropped in the chat the registration link for our ongoing YPATA call series. And with that, I want to thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and let's stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Great job, Kristen.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kristen. Thanks,
Robbie.
Robbie.